Have you ever heard of the term suggestive horror? It's often used to describe an aspect of the horror genre within a story. Let's say that is more like a technique, a tool, a way to portray the scary events that happen within a narrative, in the same way as gore and jump scares get utilized to scare the audience of a horror movie. For most of the time, it's a term that people like to associate with the psychological horror subgenre, and the main reason for that is because the suggestive horror matches perfectly well with the proposal that defines psychological horror as a whole, though it can certainly work with the other branches that exist inside horror. As the own term suggests, no pun intended, the suggestive horror suggests the existence of the horror in the narrative. This time pun intended. In the case of horror movies, it relies on the audience's imagination to fill the gaps of what's being shown to them, since the scenes in question only imply what happened instead of completely exposing the cause and the outcome of the scare, as well as the appearance of the monster or the killer. For example, it can imply the presence of an invisible person in the room, making us question if someone is actually there or not. It may show us a killer swinging an axe against children, but they only show us blood and some members scattered around, forcing our imaginations to visualize the whole slaughter. At first, it seems these men are walking around in a peaceful forest, until the trees suddenly move, making us imagine where and when the creature might stalk or attack them next. Their unstable state of mind makes us wonder if what's happening is real or not, if there's a supernatural, cosmic force acting upon them, or if they lost their minds for being isolated in their lighthouse for a long time. In other words, suggestive horror works on some of the many facets from the famous fear of the unknown, mostly exploring the concept of less is more. The implication of an invisible presence, a terrifying event or action, the existence of a creature, or the questioning of our reality can sometimes be far scarier than having the answers explicitly delivered to us. Of course, that's not to say that explicit horror is inferior. Not showing what's happening can be pretty frustrating, especially if the experience does not reward the audience as much as it should. So showing the horror can work pretty well in favor of the movie if that's the case. But there's also the risk of losing some of the feel and the atmosphere set around the whole narrative, and in worst cases, it can completely ruin it. So in the same way showing too much can backfire, showing less might not function as well as it should too. Like the jump scares, the suggestive and explicit horror are tools that need to be handled with care to give good results. And like many techniques used in the horror genre to scare the audiences, both can be mixed to deliver some pretty interesting and effective outcomes, especially if they are put together with a blend of two distinct yet pretty similar narrative subgenres: the found footage and the mockumentary, or pseudo-documentary, found documentary, whatever, you name it, they are the same thing. The found footage subgenre is a pretty famous one. Its popularity is due to the way it approaches visual storytelling, presenting their stories as rare, recovered, confidential, or lost video files that were documented by someone who participated in the important events the stories take place. A narrative aspect that gives some groundedness and a realistic feel to what could be a fictional or completely absurd situation to believe in, such as hauntings, demonic possessions, alien invasions, or isolated outbreaks no one heard about. Now, if the movies themselves manage to make good stories that feel realistic, that's a whole other conversation. But the simple fact that some of these movies are able to make a bunch of people question or even consider what's being shown to them as real or not is one of the main reasons for its huge success. Now, the mockumentary subgenre has the pretty similar proposal of documenting material about a fictional important event that someone or several people were a part of in a realistic manner. But the main similarities end right there. Just like a documentary, the mockumentary is more concerned with discussing and analyzing these events through a more scientific, critical, and thoughtful perspective, with several people giving their opinions, knowledge, and beliefs of what happened, or what's happening at the time the events are being recorded. It may not be as popular as the found footage, but it originated a lot of very creative and interesting movies. And one of those movies, which is also the main subject of this video, manages to mix all of the subgenres and techniques I mentioned before with so much skill and mastery that it baffles me how little known it is between horror fans. And I think it deserves a lot of more attention than it gets. because those aspects are so well crafted and put together in its structure that it should be used as a very good example of how to use and execute them in a horror movie. I'm talking about the 2015 indie film written and directed by Phil Gildry, Simon Herbert, and David Weiland, Savageland. Which, to properly discuss and analyze in this video, I must do two important things: contextualize you into the movie's plot and warn you of something pretty important. Even though I'm gonna try to make this as spoiler light as I can, this is a movie that should definitely be watched blindly. With the few things I said about it already, I guess it's clear that I really recommend it. I thought it was a very unique experience that the less you know about it, the better. Fortunately, the movie is legally available for free on the Kings of Horror YouTube channel and on Tubi. The links will be in the description, go watch the movie and then come back, alright? Oh, and one more thing before we go in. At some point in this video, there's going to be a weird, tasteless, and completely out of place food analogy. And I hope you are ready for that. Now, if you're staying anyway or have already watched the movie, let's go! First, let me prepare my shitty deep voice to contextualize you into the movie. Alright, let's do this! Savageland is about the lone survivor of a massacre that occurred during a single night at a small town on the border between Mexico and Arizona. The man, Francisco Salazar, an illegal immigrant, is the main suspect for murdering and wiping out the entire population of the town of Sangre de Cristo in a sadistic, inhuman manner. But things change when the pictures the man himself took to register what happened on that fateful night come to light, bringing an entirely new dimension to the case, as well as some terrifying truths about the Sangre de Cristo residents' destiny. This is as far as I go to tell you the story details of Savageland, but to get into the more analytical aspects of this movie, I'm gonna have to spoil some things. The movie starts presenting the audience to what could be defined as the inciting incident of the story. In this case, the gruesome slaughter that took place in Sangre de Cristo, showing you some pretty nasty crime scene pictures. A lot of blood splattered around, some bagged human members, bloody rags curled around viscera, this kind of thing. And also, they show a lot of shots of the small empty ghost town in the middle of the desert, setting in a nihilistic and revolting feeling surrounding the whole situation. The documentary-style narrative serves not only to bring the audience's morbid curiosity to the case, but it also serves as a way to ramp up the tone, which builds upon itself through the whole runtime until the end. It creates an uneasy atmosphere that grows increasingly intriguing and horrifying as the truth gets slowly and fully exposed to us, which serves to make the lost pictures that are revealed later even more terrifying and the thematic social discussion even more relevant, which the movie doesn't try to make it subtle in any shape or form. It's actually pretty on the nose, basically slapped on your face. And to be honest, the documentary-style narrative of the whole thing excuses that, especially because the opinions and the analytical views of the people being interviewed are essential to make the topics and points being debated as clear as possible to the audience. Several characters are presented and all of them have a say on what happened, and their distinct point of view from each other serves as a way to ground the movie in reality, showing people with different opinions on a very controversial topic. The interesting thing though is the decision of the movie to first focus on a simpler, more one-dimensional perspective of the whole Sangre de Cristo massacre event, which doesn't take long to become unapologetically bigoted and extremely absurd in comparison to what really happened. It's when the movie introduces a little bit of that suggestive horror sprinkled around this structure, showing characters that don't suspect Francisco Salazar for being the only survivor, but because he's an illegal immigrant, and because of that, they rather blind themselves to the undeniable proofs that appear before them and believe he killed more than 50 people all by himself. It's something that touches upon a layer from the fear of the unknown, with people afraid of what they can't or refuse to explain or properly understand. In this case, people from different countries and cultures. That's pretty well said when one of the sparkled personalities of the movie, in a legitimately infuriating speech, reduces the Mexican culture to a mere stereotype about death that doesn't really correspond to the cultural complexity existent in Mexico. But that soon changes when people on Francisco Salazar's side start to give some more details on what happened, including some footage of his questionnaire at prison. Here we get another glimpse of the suggestive horror working together with yet another layer from the fear of the unknown. We see shots of a broken, traumatized man, and thanks to the amazing acting from Noé Montes, it's pretty clear that he's seen horrible things that are going to haunt him for the rest of his life, and that the people around him as well as the audience are never going to be able to fully understand the magnitude of the terror he experienced that night. These scenes, together with some accounts involving the horrible and indescribable things that can be found in the desert, which are told by the character of Carlos Olivares, a retired border patrol officer, serve to increase the mystery that the atmosphere of the movie has been building up so far, paving the way so the found footage horror can jump through the goddamn door with both feet hitting on your chest at full force. This is when the story finally rewards the audience with the moment they've been waiting for since it all started. It's like, until then, the movie has been teasing us, showing some ingredients and spices of a very delicious meal. Like I said in my detention video, horror is like the rice of narrative genres. So we got the rice, we got the meat, or the vegetables in case you are a vegetarian, we got the potatoes, and accompanying it all we have the mozzarella, the heavy cream, some chimichurri for the meat, or cumin for the vegetables, and rosemary for the potatoes. But wait! There's more! We accompany all that with a really tasty orange juice, and voila! We have Piemontese rice with grilled meat or steamed vegetables and baked potatoes, together with a refreshing glass of orange juice. And now we are finally ready to eat! In the case of the movie, we are finally ready to jump right into the horrors that pretty much literally consume the residents of Sangre de Cristo. I probably shouldn't have said that with an excited voice, or made a food analogy in the first place. Now that I think about it, it sounds weird and creepy. Maybe insensible. Fuck, I guess I look like a cannibal now. Should I take this off? Maybe. Anyway, this is the moment the mockumentary and the found footage completely blend with each other. The found footage subgenre enters when the so talked about pictures are finally shown to us, while the mockumentary adopts the function of describing and deducing the events in the best and most detailed way possible, as if we were part of the investigation of the whole case, taking the available pieces of the puzzle and putting them together to reveal the full picture. The movie manages to tell us the complete story in one of the most unique ways I've seen in a while, which is the very reason why I think Savageland is masterful at using the suggestive horror and the audience's imagination at its full advantage. The pictures are pretty revealing and disturbingly realistic, as if they were taken directly out of a Trevor Henderson artwork. They look eerie, scary, ominous, and downright terrifying to look at, especially because they capture extremely well the frightening, desperate feel and the somewhat animalistic and vicious nature surrounding the situation at the time they were taken. One of the characters summarizes it all through a very simple line of dialogue.
Something primal, horrible moved through Sangre de Cristo that night, and the one survivor made a record of it.
There's a lot to look at and pay attention to when looking at each picture. You see images of people ruthlessly attacking each other, as if they completely lost their humanity and control of their senses. In some photos, they don't even look human, with creatures having their bodies seemingly rotting while they move, and others possessing a more monstrous and even a demonic-looking aspect to their profile, especially because how deformed and barely comprehensible some of these shots are, showing that they were snapped while the creatures were moving and Francisco Salazar running from them. And while these pictures tell a story by themselves, they end up generating more questions than answering the previous ones. After all, they have limitations regarding the sole nature of photography, so they won't show us things that could only be illustrated if they were in video form, such as the way the creatures might have moved, the ghastly horrifying noises they make, screams of the victims echoing through the night, sound of the wind, elements that in video format would surely not be as effective as the way they are presented to us, making the project feel just like a generic found footage zombie movie. When these shots are shown in picture form, the movie allows the audience's imagination to flow and fill some of the gaps, suggesting those elements instead of completely showing them. But fortunately, the usage of suggestive horror in the movie doesn't end there. If they only showed us the pictures, discussed them, came to a conclusion, and ended the movie on that note, they wouldn't feel believable or even scary. So, to add more layers to these horrific pictures, the characters narrate the events through deduction. Like I said before, you figure out what really happened at the same time they do, and for that reason, Savageland is one of the very few examples that benefits more from telling rather than showing. With characters walking around the crime scene, connecting the dots to the chronological order the pictures were taken, and Salazar's testimony at prison, once again, we are involuntarily engaged to link those dots together with our imaginations through the suggestion of how everything turned out to be. The movie gives us the pieces of the puzzle and we do the heavy lifting to connect them. With the pictures, we can only see crucial, important specific moments frozen in time. But with the narration, we are able to add more details and give continuity and life to them. They are explicit enough to guide our minds to visualize those scenes unfold, as if they were remarkable frames of a movie reel running inside our heads. It's a perfect example of the good old less is more quote, which is often used to praise horror movies that have a subtle approach to the way they scare their audiences. Savageland manages to do that without being subtle in any single way, and in this case, that's a really good thing. At the same time it challenges us to use our imagination to scare ourselves, it rewards us with a little glimpse into the unknown bits of the story and some answers that, like in any story that knows how to use and balance suggestive and explicit horror, we are not sure we want to get, especially if they reveal a horrifying truth about our world. Savageland is criminally unheard of, and I think it's a craft that should get more attention than it gets, for its thematic relevance, technical efforts, or storytelling achievements, especially because it creates a familiar horror story in a very unique manner. Just because it's available for free and has a small budget, it doesn't mean it has a low quality to it, and that's something the horror genre has consistently proven to us over and over. It's a movie that knows exactly how to deal with its financial limitations and how to use them to effectively affect its audiences in a way that not so many similar projects are able to do. It should definitely be used as an example and inspiration for future filmmakers, as well as artists who enjoy creating horror in any shape or form. For that very reason, I hope that one day Savageland gets the praise and attention it truly deserves, so it can be acknowledged as a masterclass at suggestive horror.